Hi folks, and welcome back to Steve's Kitchen, and this time we're going to prepare a nice piece of lamb's leg. This is Irish lamb leg, and that's the best there is, and it's about 2.5 kilograms, and that's enough for about 8 people. It all depends a bit how much meat they like to eat. And honestly guys, I feel so sorry for you vegans and vegetarians because you're gonna miss out on a delicious meal. Anyhow, so I've got this 2.5 kilograms piece of lamb, and I made sure that the bone was still in there. Just make sure about that. Now, one of the things is when you're preparing food, when you have guests, you don't want to leave your guests alone. You want to be with your guests the whole time. And that's a bit difficult if you're going to prepare meat because you want to cook it at the right moment and then serve it. Well, I'm going to apply a method which is called slow cooking. And we'll use slow cooking to prepare this piece of meat. And honestly, I won't have to disappear in the kitchen. I can stay with my guests the whole time. So a bit about slow cooking, and then we start working, we'll talk about the ingredients. Now, slow cooking is a method whereby you let the meat get ready, cook, for about 4 hours on very low temperatures, so around 140 degrees centigrade in an oven, fully covered up. So the meat will sit in it and it will get real tender and soft. But on top of that, it's going to absorb all the seasoning. It's going to get all the spices inside and it becomes really, really delicious. It's very soft, and the good thing is it doesn't take a lot of time for you to prepare it. Just rub it all in, and you'll see that in a few seconds, and then stick it in the oven. And the oven will do it for you. So when the time is there to serve the meat, just pull it out the oven when your guests are there. And it's easy, if you intend to eat at 8 o'clock with your guests, well, put the meat in the oven at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then it's going to be perfectly in time. But you'll see how we do this. Right, now slow cooking is a great method of cooking. It has, however, a few negative sides. One of them is that you can't create this nice golden crust on the meat like you would have it when it's grilled. You just can't have it because the temperature isn't high enough. So that's a bit of an issue. The second thing is, once you've done that in the oven, it's kind of slow cooked, and you want to start cutting it up, slicing it up, that ain't going to work because it's going to be so soft that it's going to fall apart. So these are the two negative sides of slow cooking. However, getting a nice brown crust, it is possible, and you'll see how I will do that. So now let's talk a bit about the ingredients. In terms of ingredients, you don't need a hell of a lot, and it's nothing really special. Get a nice piece of lamb leg, about 2.4 kilograms, 2 kilograms. You're going to need some cherry tomatoes. They are delicious. Use some onions, garlic, and don't buy things out of a box. Buy it fresh as you can. Some additional tomatoes. You're going to need some olive oil, some salt, fresh grounded pepper, some vinegar, wine vinegar as we call it. You can use the red one or the white one, it doesn't really matter. A bit of red wine, and then we have the spices. Spices are key to the success of slow cooking this piece of meat. And I'm going to be using rosemary and thyme. And at the end, we'll make a little sauce with fresh mint. And that's the perfect combination. And there's one ingredient that I have not talked about, and that is the mustard. Now, mustard comes in many different ways, but this mustard, guys, is special mustard. Look, see that? See all the little seeds inside? And this is what I mean. You can see all the little seeds inside. And that's exactly what we want to have to prepare this meat. Get this kind of mustard. Not the chemical stuff, but the real stuff. So let's start with preparing the meat. And the first thing we're going to do is to give it a good massage. And to do that, we're going to use some olive oil and rub it in. And don't be afraid to make your hands dirty. Here we go. Just give it a very nice and good massage. Put some more on. Don't be afraid to use a bit of olive oil. And you'll see why we're doing this in a few seconds. By the way, guys, or ladies, if you buy this meat take it out of the freezer or the fridge in time and let it acclimatize to the room where you're going to use it in. It always is a bit better for the meat. All right, so look at that. Put some salt on it. So let's say we're going to season it. Some pepper. Not too much, you know, just enough. And this is fresh ground pepper. And then again, you know, rub the salt and the pepper into it. All right, let's turn it over and do the other side. Now we're going to do it all around. Now you shouldn't be afraid of a little bit of salt. There we go, rub it in again. We seasoned the lamb with salt and pepper, and now it's time to create this golden crust, because we can't do that when you do slow cooking. So now you can either do this by getting, you know, a big frying pan and then put the meat inside and put it on the stove. But then you don't see all the areas where you bake it because you don't want to burn it, and you have to bake it very fast because you don't want the meat to be cooked too much inside, because that's the job of the slow cooking in the oven. I rather do it my way, which is a bit weird. And what I'm going to be using, guys, it's a paint stripper. Right? Now don't use your wife's hair dryer, that's not going to work. But a paint stripper creates a lot of high temperature, hot air, just like a hot air oven, and you can actually create a nice crust on your meat with it. So let me show you. Here it is, nicely golden brown, and we've done it with a paint stripper. It works terrific. We still have to make a seasoning that we will put around it before we start the slow cooking. But let me give you first a little bit of a close-up on how you can actually create a golden brown crust just with a paint stripper. So here it is, a delicious golden brown crust on our lamb leg. And now we'll put it aside and start preparing the final seasoning for it. So for the seasoning, we're going to use some garlic, some tomatoes, and rosemary. A lot of rosemary. Always work that easy. There we go. A lot of it, because rosemary is really delicious with lamb. And I'm also going to use a bit of fresh thyme. Here we go. Because spices make everything in a meal. If you don't spice your meal, then the food won't be as good as you were to spice it. So that's the sauce I'm going to make. I'm going to put a little bit more rosemary up because rosemary is really good. And let's get it into pieces a little bit. Not too much, just a little bit, because I'm going to put it in the blender in a few minutes and chop it into a few smaller pieces. Not too much, but enough. All right, here we go. So this nice, good smelling mixture now is going to go in the blender, and at the end we'll have a great seasoning that we can put on the lamb's leg. Here we go. I'm going to put a bit of olive oil into it. Let's see. Yeah, that should be it. And now I'm just going to put it in the blender and see what it gives us. That should be enough. All right, so put a couple of spoons of mustard into it. And now just mix it, because mustard and lamb is going very well together. And then you get this nice and smooth seasoning that we can rub onto the meat before we start the slow cooking. All right, so let's see how good that is. Delicious. It's great. So now I'm going to rub that onto the meat. So here's our nice piece of lamb. And all what we need now to do is to rub it on. I know it's a little bit a nasty job to do, but hey, just give it another good rub. Oops, things become slippery sometimes. Here we go. A nice good rub of mustard, rosemary and thyme combined with real mustard. What more do we want, right? I mean, look at that. Isn't that a beauty? Right. So, I'm not going to let anything go to waste. So, let's rub it on there again. You know, nice coating. All right. I may have a little bit left, and I'm still gonna put it on there, wherever we can put it on. All right, so now our roast is almost ready to go in the oven. We've got the meat nicely covered, and now we need to prepare the bed for the meat to rest on before it goes in the oven for slow cooking. And I took 3 onions, about 4 cloves of garlic, and about 3 tomatoes. And all what we have to do now is actually fry the onions in a pan so they're a little bit brownish, and then we'll create the bed underneath for the meat before we put it in the oven. So let's do that first. Again, we're going to use a little bit of olive oil. We're going to let it warm up, and then we put the onions into it. All right, so let's do that. So we added some rosemary and thyme to it, just to create these delicious flavors. And if you guys could just smell this pan here, it's amazing. The kitchen is filled with a nice aroma of rosemary, thyme, and onions. All right. So, okay, we've got our onions, our tomatoes, rosemary, the thyme, and this is going to be the bed for the meat. So let's put it in here. There we go. I don't want to have nothing to go to waste. So this will be the bed. And we'll put a few more little tomatoes on it. This is always nice and looks good and is very delicious as well. All right, I'm also going to put a few extra leaves of thyme on it, you know, just spread it around, and it will create that lovely taste. And some more thyme. There we go. See how nice that is? So now we will put the meat in here, and it is kind of ready almost to be put in the oven. I'm just going to add a couple more rosemary parts to it, because I like rosemary, the spices that is. All right, and we'll add some of this thyme as well. Wow, look at that. Isn't that something? So now we need to wrap it in aluminum paper so that all the moisture can't come out, because it's going to sit in the oven for 4 hours. And before we do that, we're going to add a little bit of red wine. And a glass is good enough. It doesn't have to be high quality wine. Just some red wine is all what we need to do. And we're just going to, you know, pour it in there, and it creates a little bit of humidity. There we go. And now we'll wrap it up in aluminum paper. And it smells already delicious. Now, if you're going to wrap it in aluminum paper, make sure it's very strong paper, okay? We tucked it in very nicely, and now it's ready to go in the oven. Place your oven at 140 degrees and let it in there for 4 hours. Place the oven at 140 degrees and set your time for 4 hours. Don't leave your oven on hot air once it's on temperature, but place it on top and bottom grill. So while the lamb leg is in the oven, we are going to prepare a little topping for it. So just before we take it out of the oven, we will be adding a little topping onto that lamb. And I'm going to use just some garlic. And as you've seen, we've used a lot of garlic in this video already. But lamb or sheep is asking for garlic. And by the way, guys, garlic is quite healthy for you. So just got a few pieces. And I'm a bit crazy about the blender, so I'm going to blend it very shortly, not very long, until I have some smaller pieces. I don't want to take too much garlic, just a little bit. And I'm going to mix this with white wine vinegar. Not too much, just a little bit. That should be enough. And I'm also going to add mint. And mint is always great with lamb and so on. So we put a whole bunch of mint in it, and that will give it an extra touch. And now we're going to blend it. You know, that's good enough. You don't need to do more than that. This smells really, really good. This is good. Although it's kind of vinegar, it still tastes good. And that's what we're going to put on top of the lamb when it's ready. So this is going to go aside. And all what we have to do now is wait until it's ready. So the roast has now been sitting in the oven for 4 hours and it's ready. So let me remove the aluminum paper. Oh, look at that. Look how beautiful that is. That roast is really, really beautiful. It smells good. It looks good. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I can only recommend try it yourself because this is a delicious meal.